Tai dar labas vakaras, visi metai buvo iš tiesų skirti Ukrainai ir aš labai tikiuosi, kad tas dėmesys kariaujančiai Ukrainai, jisai neišblės iki pat Ukrainos pergalės ir man yra didžiulė garbė šį vakarą popietę sveikinti su Ukrainos rašytoja Haskos Šyjan, leidykla Aukso, žuvys yra išleidusi jos romaną 2019 metais parašytą Už nugaros ir šitas romanas jisai yra pelnęs Haskos Šyjan pirmąjį Ukrainos rašytojai ES literatūros premiją. Ir Haska, thank you very much for coming to Lithuania, and I believe that everybody is asking the same question. How did you survive this year? And maybe you can share with us your feelings, especially today, a very important day for Ukraine.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure and honor to be here today. And I mean, obviously, it's like always very responsible mission to speak on the behalf of yourself, but also of your compatriots. And this question is probably really difficult to answer because basically today my news feed is full of people remembering talking what was a year ago. For me, in some sense, I was lucky to be abroad already. We moved to Brussels in September 2021, but we still remained in the Ukrainian context a lot because we've always been very connected. My husband is French journalist, but he was always focused on Ukraine, and it was obvious that something is coming. I mean, we were living with this war for 8 years, but that something worse is coming. For example, in December, I was translating a big analytical piece, from big international organization, convincing everyone and ourselves that it's not going to happen. And obviously we didn't want to believe in it. But then on the 24th of February, a year ago, my husband woke me up with the phrase, which obviously probably was the most outspoken phrase back then. It started. For example, my sister also has this memory. She was in Lviv, and she has had a 2 months old baby, and she was breastfeeding, 4 a.m. And then her husband, was almost sleeping, and he was like, "Что там війна? How's this war?" And she was like, "It started, So I'm sure there were a lot of these moments a year ago, which could be this very cinematographic episodes. And this year was very difficult for everyone, and I think the biggest one of the biggest problems Ukrainians face, that each of us feel kind of guilty in not doing enough. So it's since 24th of February for the whole year, everyone who is still survived physically has the guilt they didn't do enough, they're too safe or too living too normal life, or those who on the front feel guilt for those who are not with us anymore. So this, I think, is the biggest challenge that unites all Ukrainians, because obviously everyone goes through this year in his or her way, and there are different ways to process it and to digest it, but I think this is something that unites all of us, that wherever you are and whatever you do, you always have this this feeling that you're doing something not enough, something wrong,
And your book is about the war as well, but the war before 2022, February the 24th. And I have to admit that, when I closed the last page of the book, I still do not have a desire to read it again, but I really often think about that book and about the story, because it's a very, very painful story, but you are not writing about the hero in that book, or at least in that sense that we imagine the hero should be. So, and this is a controversial book even in the context of this war.
Yeah, it is very controversial, and I knew it when I wrote it, and I expected to have very different reactions to it. And to be honest, actually, I got more positive reactions than I expected. Somehow, I always saw literature as some kind of little bit of not rebel, but looking for something that is not comfortable to discuss. I like myself when books take me out of the zone of comfort, when there is something irritating in what I read. So maybe that's why I was ready like to like negative reactions as well, but I got a lot of positive reactions, and this really like warmed up my heart, because I also understood that actually like a lot of people think about it and a lot of people process it in this way, because obviously Marta is anti-hero. She's a girl who wants a normal life and she wants to escape from this reality that the war comes to her life by all possible means. But she also has this strong feeling of guilt, because some readers accuse her of being like indifferent. But no, she's not indifferent. If she would be indifferent, she wouldn't just care and she would leave or do something else. But for her, it's impossible to cut this connection with the country, with what is happening. But also she's so desperately wanting like a nice life after this, like, I'm sure many people in the audience share this experience of living through difficult 90s. And then finally she had this feeling like, here it is, I got it, like I got to this point when I can chill and enjoy like every day, and then this war comes. And also I think it's important to understand that this is the first 8 years of the war, when even in the context of Ukraine, inside the country, it was possible to isolate yourself from that. So basically the war action, the military actions were isolated in the east. And I think like during last year we learned a lot ourselves, because for example this first 8 years, like we quite often ask the question like, why people staying there, why they not leaving, like if it's dangerous to leave like, I don't know, 4 kilometers from the contact line, or like to cross this contact line to get your pension, like why you just don't bring your mother, like I don't know, to safer, nicer place, Kyiv, Lviv, like Kharkiv, like these were all places to live absolutely cool life where you don't feel the war like at all if you don't want to. And so my anti-hero, she desperately struggles for this possibility, like you know, this childish intuitive reaction to escape, to hide it, like from it, like ostrich. So yeah, so basically I kind of felt that it's good to give a voice to this as well, because
but can you say that that attitude was prevailing before 24th of February?
Well, I wouldn't say that it was prevailing, but I think like each of us, like in different contexts, like being like alone and honest with themselves, like we still all seek for this a bit, you know, like, so basically I'm sure there are people who are stronger and braver and people who are like weaker and less courageous, but you know, like I got like I mean, not positive reactions to the book, but kind of very, very understanding reactions, like even from widows or from people who lost really close people, like brother, for example, at this war, like at the first stage of this war. And recently, for example, I read a book. It's kind of autobiographical, non-fiction book. It's called A Loss, and it's written by a sister who lost her brother. It's written in English, because this girl is immigrant in UK for 15 or 20 years already, and then she lost her brother in the first 8 years. And to be honest, I also expected from this book more like, you know, heroism and pride, that my brother did this for me and for the country. But no, she basically asks a lot of questions Marta asks, maybe in less cynical and like, you know, brutal way, but she does ask the same questions, like, why didn't he just stay and remain the painter he was, and this kind of thing. So I think everyone, like, I mean, war is just like this war of aggression and invasion is just such a wrong thing that at some moments of solitude you just feel like, is there an escape? Like, is there some kind of rabbit hole I can just jump in and make it over, like cover myself with blankets, sleep and wake up and it will be gone? Like,
can you see a bit of you in Marta's character?
Well, since the book is written from the first person, I'm sure like a lot of readers, especially those who don't know me close, but like portray me from social media, they kind of think this book is like, Marta is my alter ego, or this book is autobiographic to some extent, but no. Even when I started to write it and I would understood that this one is definitely, I would want to write from the first person, I could start only when I fully detached from her, like when I fully understand it's just a different person, which I constructed, she doesn't exist, but I get under her skin. And because, for example, in my first book, my character, it's written in the third person, it's like absurdist mind flow, but the character is black male. and this black guy has more of me than Marta in some sense. So it was my instrument of detachment, because I always knew that I don't want to write autobiographical books, and I'd never put a very kind of intimate family details in what I write. So for me, it was really important to detach from Marta. So I always say that Marta could be my like good drinking buddy, like, you know, like a cool friend, like not even a close friend, but like a good acquaintance. You had some fun times together. You share you share some fun experiences together. So yeah, this is, and also like very interesting thing. As I said, like I fully constructed her. Like there was no exact prototype to her that existed. But when the manuscript was finished and I was still like adding some details, I started to meet more and more Martas. Like I really saw girls like, okay, I mean, that's her. Like, so like I was like taking more details, putting more down, adding something to her character. Yeah, but answering your question, yeah, no, she's not in me, and even my grandma approved that, confirmed that. My grandma said like, no, she's not you. So like now I can be sure that it's not self-illusion.
But can we say that Martas still exist in nowadays Ukraine?
We just discussed it like before the discussion, before this event. I think they do, and also like you know, the last year, like it changed. It changed a lot in the kind of, so to say, like logistical format, if I can apply this to this question. I mean that like a lot of people left, like a lot of women with children left at the beginning, and there is this huge discussion and huge. I mean, and I'm sure this is something we'll have to work a lot with after victory, because it's already now present. Like, you know, people who left, people who stayed, accused people who left, or people who left feel guilty, or like it's also like kind of natural that like family that is apart or couple that is apart for 1 year, things start to happen, and things start to happen back in Ukraine, and when one of the couple is away. So obviously like there are like a lot of stories. I mean, in which sense Marta, like if she's like doesn't care about this war or doesn't want to care about this war, also like how do we measure this extent, and or also if she's not faithful and doesn't want to sacrifice her. It's still all very present, like, you know, war like kind of purifies everything. It brings everything to very, very like, how to say, pure extent, like, you know, like essence of something. And there are a lot of moments when people say like, okay, I just want to change my life tremendously, and I don't want to live with someone I don't love. So it's, yeah, I mean, I think it's still very, very human and very present. It's just like it's maybe less outspoken first, and on the other hand, like we're so united in this resistance and this resilience that like we kind of, okay, let's talk about the stories later and about this aspect later, which is probably right during this year, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Okay, but Marta in the novel, she's facing that sense of guilt very deep, especially in the end. Yes, and she cannot speak to her friends. She do not socialize at all because she's in deep guilt. How do you yourself cope with that feeling of guilt, living not in Ukraine? And by the way, under my post, I got a message from one reader, and he put a picture of that chain of guilt in Ukraine. That, you know, those, and I will cite a little bit. Those who abroad feel guilty for those in Ukraine. Those not at the front feel guilty for those at the front. Those not wounded feel guilty for the wounded, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think in some sense we kind of learned how to live with it throughout these 8 years, because it's just like, you know, kind of feel like now it was a preparation, because it's just like now it's so condensed that I had like a very terrible understanding that I already forgot the names of the very first painful losses of this year. So basically it's just like so much of that like you kind of just forgot like that, like, you know, I know this girl who lost her husband in March, but then there's so many came that you just don't remember it anymore. Like now it's very intense and it's kind of present every day, and but throughout like last 8 years we kind of learned to be with it already. So for us, it was already like that. You take a trip, and someone is in the trenches, you know, and it's something that I think we're going to live to carry through all our lives. Like, it's not something we kind of can work, can fully get rid of, but it's also very human, I think. It's, to find a balance, like to still like be able to live and to enjoy your life, to raise your kids happily. But I think this is something that changed us forever.
How long did you write this book?
I started to write in summer 2016, and I wrote like quite quickly the first draft because my daughter was 3 and I had a very short writer's residence for 6 weeks, and I had the idea in mind already. So like during the 6 weeks, I kind of put like everything together from beginning to the end in the sense of plot and characters. And then I was editing when I had time. So basically I had my manuscript finished in December 2017. I mean, it was really like writing, but it was really these few short terms, like 6 weeks and plus 4, plus 3 more. But like I also always say that when writer is on the mission of completing a novel, we're writing all the time, basically. Like, you know, you observe people, you listen to dialogues, you make notes. For me, it was so difficult to let this book go that actually when the first edition was out, I reread it on the paper, on the written book, and actually second edition is a bit improved and changed. They're like small editions, but they just really like, I had the feeling, okay, I should go through it once again. Maybe I'm too much of a crazy perfectionist, but it was during lockdown, so maybe it was the way to entertain myself. So basically there was 2000, but it took 1 year to find a publisher because it's in Ukraine, even back then, like all publishers understood the controversy of the book and the reaction it might raise. So it was not an easy thing to dare to publish, and then 2019 March it was published. So basically it started to appear, to shape 2016 July. Okay,
do you remember the first reaction you got after the book was published? Not from your friends, not
I understand. Not my from grandma. This one was a very peculiar one, obviously, but the first reaction, I was really like, I find it like some luck, because the book was published in March and the European Union Prize for Literature was announced in May. So there were 2 months where people didn't even like have time to read it that much. Like, you know, book just appeared, maybe people bought it, but there was a launch in Kiev and Lviv, but you know, not that much feedback yet, because literature is like kind of slow thing, which I love about it. So basically 2000. Then there was this prize for literature, and then there were 2 more prizes nationally, and then and in between there were like a lot of positive feedbacks. But then after that, the negative feedbacks started to come, which was also very natural. And I really like, to be honest, I really appreciate even every negative review or like every negative reaction, because first I know why it's caused, and I was ready to it. And I think still think if the person made an effort to buy a book, read it, and to give you feedback, it's much more than someone who never heard about it. So then there was like this wave of arguments and discussions around the book, and then, I mean, it kind of cooled down, but now the translations are coming. So now I talk more to foreign audience, which always is a pleasure, because you have the feeling that your book, like, you know, inside in Ukraine it's one perception, but outside you kind of tell more about your country to the audiences.
Ir dabar noriu kreiptis į knygos vertėją Beatričę Beliavciv. Jūs turbūt vis tiek galite pasirinkti, kokią knygą versti, ar ne, savo gyvenime. Tai kodėl šita knyga?
Na, pirmiausia, tai buvo tikrai leidyklos pasiūlymas, bet man ji buvo labai netikėta. Savo kalba, savo pozicija. Ir, pavyzdžiui, netgi aš negalėjau iki galo pasakyti, ar ji man iki galo patiko ar ne, nes labai kontroversinė Marta. Bet kiekvieną kartą susitikę su mano draugais, Lvive dabar sako, mes visą laiką apie ją kalbėjome. Apie nei vieną knygą aš nesu tiek gyvenime kalbėjus, kaip apie už nugaros. Ir tada tiesiog aš supratau, kad žmonėm, kai jie skaito, reikia tiesiog išsikalbėti. Mano viena draugė sako, tavęs nebuvo šalia, o man taip reikėjo pakalbėti apie tą knygą, nes aš ją skaičiau. Ir tai buvo mano paskutinis priimtas sprendimas, kad taip aš versiu, nors kalba buvo labai didelis iššūkis.
Ar galima sakyti, kad iš tiesų, Ukrainos visuomenė tokia kontroversiška, nes pati Damarta kontroversiška, bet jinai yra apie Ukrainą, apie Ukrainos moterį.
Sakyčiau, kad šiandien tai, kad 14 metais, 15 jautė Lvovas, kuris yra labai toli nuo fronto zonos, jaučia Lietuva, kad galima jausti karą, o galima užsimerkti ir nejausti karą. Tiesiog gyventi labai patogų gyvenimą, vaikščioti į barus, džiaugtis ir nematyti karo, jeigu to nenori. Šiandien lietuviai taip gali jaustis. Todėl tas Martos nenorėjimas matyti karo, tai sakykime, ne patriotiškumas ir visą laiką jausmas kalties dėl to sudaro tokį jausmą, kur šiandien lietuviai galėtų pajausti.
Maždaug tu sumoki, pavyzdžiui, radaroma akcija.
Taip, tu sumoki radarą ir
važiuoji atostogauti.
Ir važiuoji atostogauti ir tavęs nedomina. Tu gali net išjungti naujienas ir neklausyti, kas vyksta. Taip 14 metais jautėsi Lvovas.
Ir tokią knygą įmanoma būtų išleisti dabar?
Manau, taip. Todėl, kad pradžia ten, karo pradžia ten.
Kas jums dar paliko įspūdį būtent šitame romane?
Paliko įspūdį tai, kad vis tik tai, kaip tu besistengtum pabėgti nuo to karo, nuo savo šalies, vis tiek neišeina, vis tiek tu sugrįžti. Ir kaip tu turi pabėgtum. Jisai yra visada su tavim.
Let's talk about future now. The war will end, obviously, and Ukraine will win. We will all win. But how do you see the future of Ukraine? The war is extremely traumatizing, and it has not finished yet. And you are writing about the traumas. And how do you see it? How do you see it in the future?
Well, I think that there will be a lot of work to do on all kind of levels, and like the reconstruction, building, rebuilding and reconstruction is actually the easiest part. For that you need money, but it's doable. But it's true that all the traumas that are inside, this is something that we'll have to work with. But what I see is absolutely positive effect that I think this really it united Ukraine the way it was never united, to the extent it was never united that much. So I just really hope that it will be, because it's maybe I now have this very romantic image that after the victory and with the reconstruction and also with all people who lived in Western Europe, because before we had this romantic vision of Western Europe, life is there easy and it's all about Dolce Vita, and basically the novel is about it as well a bit. But now people who lived a year or two in Western Europe, they also understand all the complexities of living in Western Europe. So basically they would treasure what they had in Ukraine more. That's obvious already. I see it even now, even with people who who are ready to come back, because they even during wartime they find their life in Ukraine easier in some sense, maybe more comprehensive, but so
I think that you have to.
Sorry. So I really hope that Ukraine will become this center where everything happens, the new revival of Europe in some sense, after the victory, it's going to be the place where culture is booming, and also industry and everything is it's also this is a miracle. But during 2022, the IT industry in Ukraine grew. It didn't go down. Obviously, it's very difficult in many spheres. But the fact that Ukraine is so dynamic and Ukrainians have this thing that something that is really missing in Western Europe, this dynamism that okay, we have a chance to do it, let's do it. So like, you know, they have an idea and they immediately implement it, sometimes not super cleverly without counting like business plans and everything. So I really hope that like after victory, this enthusiasm will keep going, but also that we will really find like a good platform and good instruments for all kind of dialogues with people who came back from France, obviously with PTSDs, and people who lost homes, who lost close ones, and people who like went through it like relevantly, safely, and cool. So I really hope this would be, that we will find a way to keep this unity and to keep this enthusiasm and to turn it into this kind of positive energy for recovery and rebuilding, and bringing as well something back to Europe that helped us so much during this year and keeps helping us. So kind of, you know, this exchange of this synergy that is going to come.
Can you share with us on what project or on book, what book you are working now?
Well, I do have an idea of next novel already, and I even started to work on it, but somehow, like, yeah, I always joke, like, it's already happening in my head. I already live with these people. They hang out in our apartment all the time, but I need to find time to immobilize myself in front of the laptop without any kind of other distractions and put it down. But this is something, before the invasion, I had this idea to write about kind of like city novel, easygoing life of Kyiv, because Kyiv was indeed like last 5 years, like it was just like a place to be. It was so cool, like there were so much underground life, so many things happening, so many cultural projects. It was really like a very vibing city. It was very, very vibing communities and people around. So I really wanted, I had the feeling it would be nice to kind of put it down, like, you know, conserve this epoch. But for me, it was a bit difficult to find the added value. Like, I mean, why do you write about it? Another novel about young people like hanging out and doing silly things. But now I see it a bit of this kind of story of lost paradise, because it's obvious, like, even after it's going to be rebuilt and everything, it's going to be recovered. This thing we lost forever and we're not going to gain back is this kind of carelessness, this easygoingness, and this burden of war we went through, and also the kind of understanding. Because I don't know, I grew up, my daughter grew up with understanding that this is not possible, like this kind of war of aggression and really like such a brutal invasion. And we lost it forever. So this is going, we always will be prepared. For the rest of our lives, we always will be prepared. Wherever like it ends, still will be prepared. It might happen again. Yeah, I think, I hope I'll manage to kind of make this kind of idyllic picture of Kyiv we had before invasion.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Iš tiesų dabar, neturim 15 beveik minučių, tikrai labai kviečiu klausti ir arba išvers vertėją, arba mes turim net ir vertimą, tai tikrai drąsiai klauskit lietuviškai ir angliškai, kaip jums patogu.
Hello.
Hey.
Thanks for coming to Vilnius. I was thinking, you know, after 2022 happened, would that change Marta? Did you ever thought about that?
It's obviously a very interesting question. I asked myself and many people, like, where is Marta now? What is she doing? And basically what 2022 taught me and all of us, it's also something that I understood and keep observing. It was really difficult to predict the actions and reactions of many people, because I have a bunch of people who act and do exactly what you expected them, but I have a bunch of people who did quite contrary what you would see them doing. So, for example, someone like Marta could end up from, like, you know, immigrating forever to Norway and forgetting she's Ukrainian to ending up being a like combat medic on the front line. You never know, because this was like year of such a strong changes, such a strong things we went through, that it's impossible to say actually. And there is something also very beautiful and very human in it, I believe. Thank you.
Kažkaip tos drąsos reikėtų daugiau. nepatogi tyla. Visada lietuviai niekada nieko neklausia. Okay, I also have another question from another angle. You really dig deep into the Ukrainian society. Do we understand correctly that it's you show that, you know, a funny face of traditional society of Ukraine? Can you elaborate a little bit more, because I feel that probably people here have not yet read the book.
Well, I grew up and spent most of my life in Western Ukraine, in Lviv, which is a very pretty city, but it's also very, like, you know, in some sense, conservative, family values, church, very closed circles. Well, like, you know, you have always to have, like, be well connected in the sense of, like, family, who you are, what you do. And this is something that, like, it's a super interesting phenomenon, because when I started to present the book in other regions of Ukraine, or got feedbacks from there, I understood that, like, there's so many details that, like, people from other regions don't get. Because, for example, the portrait of Max, which he is quite blurry in the book, but to me it was kind of obvious that he is this, like, you know, sweet Galician boy brought, because we had this tradition. It's also connected to the history when women had to be the one who basically take care of the family while men are at war in the prison doing political issues. And there was always this strong figure of grandmother and mother. And once there was a boy in the family, they were actually like a bit like this Italian, like moms, like, you know, the boys were like utterly spoiled with the tenderness and care, and the grandmas really like were just like, I mean, they could like warm up the soup for their 30-year-old grandson and still try it's not too hot, like, you know, this is really like a caricature, but it is also very true. And for those who are from Western Ukraine, they read it as kind of thing that is kind of organic. And for example, the reaction I had from my friend who is from Kyiv, but she spent like quite a few years in Lviv. And I was reading in Kyiv, and she was like, and you know, the audience actually thinks that you're exaggregating, but it's actually true that like that's how it happens there. And I didn't write it as a kind of mockery or something that I want to criticize badly. It just I really like to kind of put down the reality with all its kind of funny episodes and irritating episodes, and I think this is like. This is a cool thing to do, like when connected to literature, because, for example, it's not about my book, but I'm also doing a project of creating book trailers for different books. And my German publisher, they published a book of Polish writer who like wrote like incredibly mockery, like on Polish attitude to their history, and that like they want everyone like only Polish is correct, and it's obviously like an exaggregation and something your compatriots might hate you for, but it's also this like nice way to to kind of like to like, it's not even trauma, but it's like something that you like cope with every day and not always happy to cope with, so you just really like put the steam out, like putting it on the paper, like about all this like things that like that you lived with for 40 like or 35 years. So I think, I hope this is not too like caricatural or too like negative, because for me it was just like building up the context Marta lives in.
Bet gal mikrofoną reikia pasakyti. Girdėtų visi.
So I guess I'm the only one.
I hope other people are still not discouraged to do that.
So I was not actually shocked by how Marta behaved, and when you say she's anti-hero, I don't think she's anti-hero. She's just a human. What I was shocked about was the corruption level, which you described in the book. And we had the Lithuanian ambassador in Ukraine who published a book about his experience in Ukraine, and he mentioned like, okay, you need this stamp and this stamp and this stamp to get something in Ukraine. And I was okay, fine, but when what you write, like if you want to go to first grade, you can, it costs you like 100 euro, and if you want to like do this and that. Is that changing? Because it's very important that this mentality changes in people. Is it changing in Ukraine now?
Yeah, it does change. I mean, still like humans remain humans, and I believe that, like, for example, in Western Europe, this level of low-level corruption is so low that it's just impossible. Because it's also true when you wait like for some papers in the commune, you may be so annoyed that, like, you know, like your instinct would be like to look for the ways to solve it, like with some human approach or like other tools. Like this is present everywhere where humans are present. But there was a lot of changes about that because Ukraine really digitalized a lot. So this is also something that, like, I loved about last decade, and something that is really like true. Like all the Ukrainians who came to Western Europe this year, they're like, what do you mean? Like you need to go to bank and like get like your PIN code will come by post, by like, you know, paper letter? Like I haven't seen that since I was a teenager. Like, so Ukraine with this digitalization, this actually was really overcame. I mean, for example, like my simple example, I was registered as private entrepreneur in Ukraine since 2001. So like I really went through all the phases. And I remember, like, Ukrainian, the best trick to get you pay like little bribe was to say like nema blanki. Like, you know, any kind of paper you need, when it's like paper that like a passport, international passport, or like this like certificate of taxpayer. And back then, like you had to receive this certificate every quarter, like every 3 months. And then like nema blanki came. so, you know, like, and then like for some kind of $100, this blanks magically appeared. So this is something that actually was overcame. Also, like a lot of people brag about, and it's actually became some kind of even competition to pass the driving exam without bribing, because this was something that, like, when I passed my driving exam, also like 2001, 2002, it was just impossible. I mean, they wouldn't just let you pass this exam without paying. You could drive or not drive. It just didn't matter. Like, it was not about that. And all these things that you could give, like a driving license to your kid when he was 18, because you just taught him driving your car, like in the countryside. This actually is almost gone. And also, like, the things that, like, you know, to get your child at school, like, you kind of, it's still like, it is a bit in mentality in the sense that, like, for example, people from the sectors with higher salaries, when they see people from the sectors with lower salaries, like, say, medical workers, teachers, they themselves have this urge to say thank you. And then it turns into this circle of, like, ugly corruption, because someone wants to say thank you, but someone else comes to maternity hospital to give birth and like, feels obliged to pay for this. So this is still not fully gone. Like, I mean, I'm not the person who would like make Ukraine all like rosy or like, you know, blue and yellow, perfect country. But this is something that was really started to overcome with very like very kind of practical tools. Like, because now if you have like all your papers in your smartphone, like you actually don't need to go and to bribe anyone. You just like make like fight with the bot and like and yeah, be angry about it. But yeah.
Can I have one more?
Yeah, sure. It's a pleasure.
Jau paskutinis tada, nes manau, kad reikia taip.
We have issues in Lithuanian literature, I think, to describe
Mikrofoną
sex
reikia.
scenes.
And your sex scenes are amazing.
Thank you.
Really natural and really, really well written. So, you know, how do you do that?
Practicing, you know. No, but I mean, to be honest, it's like it's interesting because maybe it's what I read, what I watch, like people I hang out with. For me, it was really natural, and obviously, like the 6 scenes had like 2 reactions, either yours, which I'm very appreciating, or like, oh my god, it's disgusting, or like my grandma actually, I didn't tell you that because she asked me like, never tell it to anyone at any public talk. But she kind of, when her friends heard that she read that I wrote the book, she was like, have you heard that your granddaughter wrote the book? Yeah, and actually read it. And like, can you borrow me? No, you shouldn't read it, Zina. But like in the end, like my grandma still said, like, yeah, I mean, like we didn't talk about it, we didn't write about it, and it actually was very interesting as well that like I got a lot of positive reactions on that from women who are older than me, because I thought, okay, maybe my generation is this kind of edge, but women who are like 60 plus gave me very, very warm feedback on that, and sometimes someone younger was like kind of outraged. So I think it basically depends on the person and their own perception of sexuality and body, and And for me, like as an author, it came very natural. I didn't work on it in any kind of special way. And I know that it's true that like that's why I like writing, because this is really something that lets me push the boundaries. Like, because when I write, I don't control myself. And then I finish writing and I was like, oh my God, I actually wrote it, but it's too late. so yeah, something like that.
Taip, paskutinė.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to read the book. I did not read it yet, but I still wanted to ask, when you talk about the guilt, does it come from within of Marta, or is she condemned by the society, by friends or somebody? And in general, probably, is there condemnation for people who are not in front, like now, or former?
No, well, I mean, guilt is something that is kind of a two-way process. So basically, obviously, we have guilt that is just inside of us, but it probably was built up with something. I think for Marta, it was a lot from inside, because she feels herself as betrayer, but she feels like she was betrayed by her mother. So like actually she kind of would want probably her mother to feel guilty for that, but she doesn't know if her mother does. So I think this is really like a two-way thing. So obviously if there are people around who would tell her like you shouldn't feel guilty, it would maybe help, maybe not. But if people around kind of, they don't impose it on her, but like you just kind of feel that this is also maybe if you felt like someone should feel guilty for what they did to you, maybe you should feel guilty to what you're doing to the others now. So I think it's kind of like, two-way roads, like it doesn't exist, that one doesn't exist without another.
Kaip išsako tas laikas mūsų labai greitai, tai labai dėkui, kad atėjote. Thank you very much for being here. Ir tikrai žinokit, jeigu dar liko pinigų, tai nusipirkit knygą, tikrai nepaliks abejingų. Čia tai garantuoju. Tai ačiū Jums labai.